just wanted to get on here and make a quick video. Um, Today I want to talk about dating and disclosing. I know I get a lot of questions about how having herpes has affected my dating life. How do I tell people that I have herpes? What kind of reactions do I get when I tell people? So I just kind of wanted to get on here and I guess answer those questions and kind of give y'all a little bit of help about disclosing to people. So for me, I have had just about every reaction you could possibly think of when disclosing. I've had some good ones, I've had some bad ones, I've had some um, really bad ones. It's kind of all over the place, but for the most part my reactions from guys have been pretty good. Most people, when I tell them that I have herpes, are pretty calm about it, are pretty accepting about it. It's really not as bad as people make it out to be. I know a lot of us, especially being new to it, you have in your head that like nobody's going to be okay with this, nobody's going to accept this, and actually the opposite is completely true. Most people don't care, especially ladies when it comes to the men. They don't care, like at all. My first experience with disclosing actually went pretty smooth. Told him, and he was just like, okay, well, I appreciate you telling me. He made sure that he got tested, and after that, we still stayed cool. We didn't have any issues with each other. We ended up not dating, but it, it wasn't a big deal. So for me, the biggest thing about disclosing is just being honest about it and going into it with confidence. I found from experience that like when I have my head on straight and I go into it with not really an attitude, but with the mindset of, I'm okay with it and you can either accept it or not type of mindset, then it makes it a lot easier. And it takes the pressure off of myself. But for the most part, there's a couple of different ways that I do it. One of the ways that I do it is if I'm talking to somebody, the moment that sex comes up, I take it as an opportunity um, to talk about herpes and to disclose. And it could simply be just kind of picking their brain about how they feel about certain things. Like, you can ask them, how do they feel about STDs? How do they feel about people with STDs? Or even if they've ever had one. I think that's a really good question to ask people in general. When is the last time you got tested and have you ever had an STD? And I promise you that'll open up a whole conversation that will tell you a lot about them and their mindset about STDs in general. Um, because if you're dealing with someone who's never gotten tested, then your first question should be why, and why not? What are you doing? I need you to get tested because at this point you don't know your status. Um, but also, the question of have you ever had an STD opens things up so you can see their mindset about them. How do they feel about STDs? Do they think it's no big deal? Do they think it's, oh my gosh, it's gross? Do they think like, oh yeah, like if somebody tells you, oh yeah, I had to clap like 4 times, but I took a pill, I got rid of that. I'm concerned because you didn't learn your lesson the first time or the second or the third. Um, so that's kind of how I pick people's brains just to figure out where their mindset is about it, and then also asking them like, what do they think about people that have STDs? I need to get in your head. Do you think people who have STDs are nasty? Do you think they're just like everybody else? That'll tell you a lot about that person. And sometimes, depending on that response, determines on whether or not I even have to waste my time disclosing to you. Because if I don't like your answer off rip, and it's something that I know that I'm not going to deal with, as far as even like if your answer completely turns me off of even thinking about dating you, there's no reason for me to even waste my time disclosing. It's like, okay, well, this conversation is over. This, whatever this is over. You have a nice day. It was nice meeting you. And a lot of times I do take the opportunity to say something simply because I like to educate people, and I don't want them spreading their ignorance or foolishness to the next person. But it's not necessarily something that definitely if there is anything sexually related involved, then I would definitely say disclose, give somebody an option, give them that opportunity. I was blessed to be one of those people who did have a choice. Everybody doesn't get that choice, so some people's choices are taken away from them, so I respect that, and I will always give somebody a choice to make the decision of whether that's something that they want to deal with or not. But um Another thing about disclosing is, like I said, the responses. Like, how I get questions about, how do I deal with a bad response, or how do I deal with someone, who didn't take it very well, or the people who blow up, or what is the worst experience I've ever had. And my answer to that is you don't. Because it's not something that you have to deal with or tolerate, especially if it's somebody you don't even know. And even if it is somebody that you know, like, sometimes you have to be willing to just um, kind of take people for who they are and move on. But for me, it's more of, I look at the positive side of it, and it's just people eliminate themselves. So if you're gonna blow up at something like this, and you can't handle it, then chances are you're not somebody that I need to be with. This is something that's a part of my life. So it's kind of one of those you can take it or leave it things. And I've learned from experience from trying to stay with people who haven't accepted it. It's not good. It's not healthy, especially if it's constantly being brought up and if they're not supportive of it. It's not really worth it, and it's not really worth your time. But for me, I see disclosing as a great way to show people's real intentions. It definitely has a way of bringing out, what kind of intentions they had for the relationship anyway, whether they were just in it for sex, whether they're in it for the long haul, whether they're really serious about you or not, whether they really like you like they say they do. Disclosing usually tends to bring that out, the good, the bad, and the ugly, whatever it is. But also knowing your worth plays a huge part in it, because when you know who you are and you know what you're worth and you realize that herpes hasn't changed the fact that you're an awesome person, then somebody not being okay with it doesn't rattle you as much. And I'm not saying that it doesn't happen and that, every once in a while you'd be like, dang, I kind of like them. I have those moments. But at the same time, I also realize that it's their loss. So, okay, if they weren't cool with it, that's fine. Somebody else will be. And, you keep it moving on to the next one. Um, but one of the things I had to learn was knowing if somebody really accepted it. Because I know I've had a lot of couple of situations where, you'll tell somebody and they're okay, they're kind of cool with it. And then you have a couple different types of people. Like, you have the people who are cool with it, and or they think they are, but they're not really sure, mostly because they're not educated. Um, and I actually like when people ask me questions, like, a lot of times I'll tell them about it. I'll just kind of share my story. That seems to help a lot. Like when I tell them that I have herpes, I don't just be like, oh, yeah, by the way, I have herpes. I'll actually share with them a little bit about how I contracted it, and then ask them if they have any questions. Give them some time to think, give them some time to process it, especially with the guys. Um, you're not always gonna get an answer right off the bat if they're cool with it. Some people need to think about it. That's not something that people just hear on a daily basis. Um, I don't want to say it's like dropping a bomb, but it's not something that people come across every day. So give people a chance. Oh, sorry, I also put in my eye. To think about it and to figure out if it's something that they want to deal with. Give them their space. Don't haggle them with questions 24/7, and just kind of see what happens. But don't wreck your brain while waiting on that answer either. Um, and then, as far as knowing if they really accepted it, you know, can they even say the name herpes? And I think that really goes into you being accepting it too. I know when people around me aren't haven't 1000% accepted me having herpes because they can't say it. Like they'll be like, "Oh, your situation or that thing or whatever they want to call it." And I'll be like, "What, herpes?" So that's a big deal breaker for me, especially with the fact that I've been public about it. Is I have to be around somebody who's 1000% cool with it, and with me saying the word herpes 10 times a day, or me getting on a video like I am right now and saying herpes, 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 herpes. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with other people knowing? How do you I poke and prod. I ask a lot of questions. Not just are you okay with me having herpes? How would you feel if you got it? That's a huge question that I like to ask people, because it's one thing for you to be cool with me having it. It's another thing for you to be okay with the possibility of you contracting it. Is this a risk that you're willing to take? Are you willing to get educated about this? How would you feel if you got it from me? Do you think you would resent me? Would you throw it back in my face later? Those are kinds of questions that you want to ask people, and really not be afraid to have a discussion. The biggest thing about disclosing is just being able to have that open dialogue, and it usually most of the time ends up leading you into so many other conversations that need to be had anyway about getting to know people. It'll really get you to a place where you can poke and pry and learn about who that person is and what their mindset about things are, not in herpes, STD related, health related, or not. It'll just kind of show you a little bit of who they are on every level. And then another question that I've been getting a lot lately is how it affects my dating life with me being public. Um, it affects it a little bit sometimes. I won't lie, it does. Actually, I'll tell y'all a story. I recently met somebody. It was a party, and he asked me for my number, and I've actually started changing the way that I disclose now that I'm public and I make videos about it. Because I use it as a really good way to weed people out. Can you handle the fact that everybody else knows I have herpes? So I gave him my number, but I also gave him my Instagram. And so now that's what I'm decided to do. People, I just give it to them. I'll give them like my Facebook or my Instagram or some type of social media because all of my videos are also on there. And I let them go look through that. And it's like, if you can handle that's like my first cut. If you can handle the fact that I got videos going, um, then hey, we can take it to the next level. If not, we have nothing else to talk about. So that guy in particular, never heard from him again. And I won't lie, I hurt my feelings just like a teensy bit. I've been out the dating game for a minute, and that was by choice. I decided to be celibate, and I also decided to try to take a step back from dating just to get myself together and heal from other relationships and old things. So jumping back in was new for me, and jumping back in on this side of the fence was new for me because back before I decided to come out about my herpes, my dating life hadn't really changed much. I would tell guys, I've even used it as a way to get guys to try to leave me alone, and it backfired. Let's see, I literally had one guy. I tried to use herpes as a way to like, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you anymore. And I didn't know how to tell him that I didn't want to hang out with him, and he was asking me like come out and come over his house and hang out, and I was like, oh yeah, by the way, I have herpes, and his response was, okay, so how long is it gonna take for you to get here? So ladies, they don't really care as much as you think they do, and that's why I think it's a good idea for us to have that conversation, guys, as well. Um, don't be afraid to ask people. I think the biggest thing is just having that conversation with them, not only disclosing your status, but finding out what their status is too. Because if you tell them your status and you're not getting theirs, then you're really not getting anywhere, and nobody's protected. So that's pretty much my spiel for the day. I didn't have much to say. I just wanted to get that off my chest and kind of answer some of the questions that I've been getting um, here and there from everybody lately. So I'll give you guys a second. If there's anybody that has questions, feel free to comment them or post them now. And then if not, I am going to buy myself some dinner because I have just gotten off work and I am starving. So is there any questions? Going once, going twice, 3 times? All right. Well, y'all have a good night. I will talk to y'all later. Bye bye.